Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order the Spokane County Planning Commission meeting. Today is Thursday, it's September the 26th. The public may participate in person or remotely by utilizing our web link and telephone conference links, *9 to raise hand and *6 to speak. Individuals are limited to 1 3-minute comment period for any item. Please keep your comments specific to the current agenda item. Chat is not supported. First order of business, as we typically do, is we introduce ourselves to the citizens. To my right, Logan, would you start off, please?
Good morning, Logan Camporiali.
Bonnie Edwards.
Wayne Brokaw.
Clyde Hossey.
Pete Rayner.
Stephen Pohl. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, commissioners, for being here. The first order of business after that is what we call open forum. This is the part of the commission's process where we allow or ask or solicit comments from the public that are not on this agenda today. So repeat, and that applies to anybody who's online, and our faithful staff will alert us to anybody online. But if you want to address something to the commission that is not on today's agenda, now would be the appropriate time to come forward and speak to us. Is anyone here?
You have at least 3 yellow tickets for this.
These are wedding planning and they're part of the public hearing. They're
Not on the agenda today.
Oh, it's not. Yeah, it was, we just have the gun club and the meat packing thing. Okay, so we'll categorize these as addressing these. So let's start with Allie Elston. Would you like to speak? Yes, correct. Scott, before we start the timer, do we no longer require addresses?
No.
Just the name.
Just the name is fine.
Okay, just your name.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Allie Elston. I'm here with my husband, Michael. We're the owners of the greenhouse on Harvard, located out in Rockford, where we reside and are raising our family. Earlier this year, we received a letter of inquiry from the county submitted by a Greenbluff venue and their attorney regarding zoning restrictions. After consulting with our attorneys and county officials, we have learned the county is currently undergoing a significant zoning overhaul and will not be accepting zoning applications until 2026. Despite that,
No, keep going. Yeah.
Despite this, we remain committed to working with the county to explore alternative solutions that will allow us to continue our operations. We have already reached out to the other venues mentioned in the letter and would like to propose that the county consider including large tract agriculture in the upcoming county amendment proposal alongside the existing rural traditional designation. We, as in me and my husband, purchased an 80-acre parcel of large tract ag in Rockford from our family's property, the majority of which is actively farmed without issue. This property was purchased with the intention of establishing a retail commercial greenhouse and a multi-purpose venue for weddings and events. We obtained the necessary permits and passed all inspections for our commercial greenhouse. Our goal is to expand our operations to include events under our current commercial permit. We see how the north side of Spokane County is rapidly expanding and the many opportunities there are to gather up there at markets, festivals, fruit and vegetable pickings, wedding venues, etc. And we want the opportunity to provide the same on the south side and the chance to provide a beautiful place for our community to gather. To this end, we support Trish Easton's proposal at Barn and Blossom and propose the following amendments. Number 1, zoning matrix adjustment. Remove the small tract ag designation from weddings and events and list weddings and events as a standalone category. This would align with other agricultural, residential, and business uses within the county. Assign a conditional use to appropriate zones such as rural traditional, large tract ag, and small tract ag. Number 2, accessory use. Allow weddings and events as an accessory use for existing businesses with the necessary infrastructure, such as nurseries and wineries that can responsibly host such events. And number 3, a definition update. Revise the definition in section 14.300.100 to greenhouse commercial, a land use category that permits the operation of a greenhouse or nursery for the cultivation and sale of plants, flowers, and related products. This category may also allow educational, social, or recreational events related to gardening, such as workshops and classes. Weddings and social events are permitted as an accessory use, subject to available space and on-site parking. All events must comply with local noise ordinances. And we appreciate your time and your attention to this matter and look forward to discussing these proposals further. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfectly done. Michael. Greg Miley.
Greg Miley. My wife and I own Palouse Ridge Events. We've been here many times. We've addressed the issues with you. I support what Ali was just discussing about moving forward with some language that allows us to go forward with the blessings of the county and not be in a situation where we look to next year and not know exactly what we're doing. So time is of the essence because we are booking into next year. And we want to be able to tell people, yes, we'll be in business. So I would just ask that we look at this in a prudent way. Scott's team, I've been discussing it with them. They're looking at languaging. Any questions or thoughts that you might have of me? All right, thank you.
Thank you. And Trish Eason, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's nice to see you all again. As we meet today, we're coming up on 10 months of talking about this issue without a resolution. Even a temporary permit that would allow other venues outside of small tract ag to operate. So as an owner of 2 properties in Spokane County, one for my residence and one for my business, I invested in finding a long-term solution that makes sense for the county as a whole. It appears the STA Weddings and Events decision was a resolution to a situation that arose from conflict. I get the feeling that continues to be the root of the strong hesitation for finding a way forward. I believe the unintended consequence of that decision granted small tract ag a monopoly on one of the largest growth industries, weddings and events. STA venues use this as an avenue to write complaints about anyone else outside of STA to keep all the business to themselves, as this was the basis of all of our non-compliance complaint. What I've learned is STA is a tiny portion of our vast county, and there is a strong demand and need for venues to be allowed in other areas. I understand the stickiness of this, and there are a lot of hobbyist venues that don't have an infrastructure to responsibly accommodate a wedding or event, and I would speculate that lies the root of most complaints in the Green Bluff area. It's important to note that while STA allows event venues, the same use is restricted as an accessory use for businesses that are naturally aligned with weddings and events such as mine. Across Washington State and the nation, successful nurseries and wineries often incorporate such events seamlessly. Following are my thoughts to possible text amendments. As Ali had said, delete STA from weddings and events and have them as a standalone line item in the zoning matrix. This is in line with all the other uses within the county, from their assigned conditional use to wherever zone it seems appropriate: small tract ag, large tract ag, rural traditional, etc. Allow weddings and events as an accessory use to existing businesses that are a natural fit and already have the infrastructure to responsibly host such events like nurseries and wineries. And I would also like to see an update in the definition of greenhouse commercial to something similar as a land use category that allows the operation of a greenhouse or nursery for the cultivation and sale of plants, flowers, and related products. This category may also permit the hosting of educational, social, or recreational events related to gardening, such as workshops and classes. Weddings and social events are permitted as an accessory use, subject to the availability of space and on-site parking. All events are required to comply with the noise ordinance of which it is located. In closing, I would like to invite you all and anyone else from the county to my business to understand the infrastructure my husband and I have heavily invested in so we can work together to find a solution forward. We have spent the last 5 years building a community around us to provide a special place people can gather. It is integral for business owners to know their investment is secure and supported to grow without the threat of a complaint jeopardizing their business. I am asking the county to help me find a way to support my business in implementing complementary revenue streams moving forward.
Thank you. Just like the Academy Awards. Scott, would you regale us on the status of these matters?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. We have looked at it, as it's been noted, it's been several months that we've been discussing this. We have looked at it in a version of the small tract ag temporary use. We have been also looking at it as a conditional use. But for the last 3 months plus, we have also been watching and a similar case wind its way from the Growth Management Hearings Board through the appeal courts and finally to the Washington State Supreme Court. We got the Supreme Court decision only a couple weeks ago, and this is related to King County passing an ordinance that allows for wedding events and other things in agricultural areas. The Growth Management Hearings Board found that to be in violation of the Growth Management Act because it took ag land out of production. The appeals board, or I'm sorry, the Court of Appeals overruled the Growth Management Hearings Board and said, no, that's not an accurate reading. And I'm not an attorney. I'm just kind of relaying the basic facts here. It was appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court went back and upheld the Growth Management Hearings Board. And so what we have to look at now is in any area that has agricultural production, is the process being able to take out even an acre or two of that? And what we're hearing from these court decisions is FutureWise and others are challenging that, saying you're taking ag land out of production and GMA doesn't allow that. So we have a big hurdle in front of us that we didn't have earlier in the year. We're still digesting that court case. There were some things about King County that don't necessarily apply here. And there's also, perhaps there's a path, needle we can thread here. But that's the biggest reason this has been sort of on hold for better than 3 months, is we've been watching this thing wind its way through the court system. And the Supreme Court has acted in a way that doesn't help us move this forward. Doesn't mean we are giving up on it. As has been mentioned here, the idea of bringing economic viability in our rural areas to help offset agriculture itself is strongly supported by us and I believe you and our other commissioners. But we have to work within the bounds of the Growth Management Act. So in a sense, that's where we are. We are trying to look at this as quickly as we can. And frankly, once we're past today with the rest of the comp plan amendments and some of these zoning text amendments, we have some time to roll up our sleeves and really dig into it. We will have something for you, at least as a summary, at the October 17th Planning Commission session.
Thank you.
Could I ask, do you know the name of the case? Just curious to read more about it.
I don't have it, but I can send it to you.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions on this matter? There's more to come, I take it, so.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Someone's online. Lisa. Thank you, Ron. Lisa, you have the floor. Unmute, please. Great.
Hello, thank you. Lisa Hewitt here. I'm contacting you today regarding CPA-03-24.
Oh, that's not on this issue. Could you just hold your comment, Lisa, while we let Mr. Chesney introduce the first? I have to open the public hearing and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Just hold, please. So without exception or objection, open public hearing for comp plan amendment 02-24. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have some summary slides for you. And before I get to those, I want to actually jump ahead on paper on the agenda, because after we listed this after each of the comp plan amendments, and that is the what we call the concurrency or composite impact analysis. And that is something that is important for you to know before we start the discussion of the CPAs. We're going to ask you to vote on them individually, but we want you to realize that in the cumulative impact of these, there's a very simple conclusion. The cumulative impact of these amendments, if approved, will not degrade the levels of service from our capital facilities plan. And so that is a kind of a key hurdle at the end of this. You see the other hurdles, the 6 ways of amending that. but I wanted you to know upfront that the CFP is not negatively affected by these projects. That said, as we know, GMA allows this to happen once a year. We have looked at 4 new amendments this year. There were 2 continued from past efforts, one of which is we're going to ask you to continue again to 26. And then this hearing is to take final testimony from the public, and we will be asking you for a recommendation on each of these to take forward to the Board of County Commissioners. You can see here a fairly wide-ranging group of amendments this year, including CPA 5 on the north side of Spangle. So these are the top 4 you can see at Wall and Country Homes, less than an acre, about 3 acres in the Hastings Farwell area, 5 acres in the Mead area, 11 in North Spangle. CPA 0222, which we've seen several times, and we told you last time that it is not moving forward because there's no agreement on SEPA mitigation between the applicant, the DOT, and the city. Nonetheless, rather than have it withdrawn, we will be asking you to recommend that the board continue it into the 26th cycle. CPA 07, as you recall from before, was withdrawn and not brought forward. And 1223 is from last year that was continued in order to provide another year's opportunity for public comment and discussion. So the 6 criteria by which any amendment is done, any proposal must meet at least one of these. So CPA 02 on the north side, the northwest quadrant of Wall and Country Homes Boulevard, a little less than an acre, recommended, or the request is from low density to high density residential. It will obviously increase the residential population. We have heard about the various impacts from traffic to water to all of these you've seen before. There's the context, and we would be happy to stop and let you take testimony on CPA 02.
Lisa is on the line.
I think she was on 03, but maybe I'm
Oh,
wrong.
I thought it was 02. 03? Okay, sorry. Testimony from the public, from anybody on the line, row 2? No one in the audience. I don't have any slips up here, just for the record. Commissioners?
I didn't realize we were going to be here.
You'll need to come down here and state your name, please. It's okay.
When you're done, if you could fill out that yellow slip.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't realize there would be an opportunity.
I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
I'm Aaron Nilsson. I live around the corner from this project.
Sure.
I just want to give it one more chance to say we don't believe that this is a good amendment for this property because it is too small to support high density. It is in a sensitive area. The egress and the route to our very homes will be blocked at least by construction, if not by constant traffic at this property. I went by last night after the evicted tenant had left, and there was trash strewn all over, piles of things. It's an absentee landlord that I don't believe has the community's best interest at heart. We do feel, I think I can speak for most of my neighbors, that what he would be allowed to do as a property improvement as it stands today, as any of us have bought our property, we have the right to do different things. Going high density with 20 plus units on this little speck of land that hosts wildlife, and I watched a moose in distress there just a few months ago, thrashing around. It's not even, there's not enough room for the wildlife that's there, let alone adding 20 more cars and apartments and people and children. It's just not, we just hope that you'll turn this down because it will negatively affect our entire neighborhood. I had to go down to City Hall this week and get neighbors drive 25 for our neighborhood because people are already cutting through trying to get their kids to school and whatnot. So I just hope that you guys will vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Commissioners,
Commissioners?
happy to take any questions from you in your deliberations.
Yeah,
Questions?
I just think I have no questions there, but I'm really concerned about first responders and everything that is a very congested area.
Any other questions? Yeah, someone's online, okay.
Hi there, this is Meredith Banka, and I'm also a resident of the neighborhood. Thank you so much for entertaining comments again today. I just want to share that I believe that the property owner here had the best of intentions to develop this lot as low density. And as he kind of started to uncover some of the inherent issues with the lot, as far as setbacks, environmental impacts, traffic impacts, access to wall, it became really apparent to him that perhaps he had made a poor investment as far as development of this particular lot. And that the only way to really get this asset to perform for him was to find a way to take it to a higher number of units, because high density would allow him to go up rather than out. And this became apparent to me in a conversation after the last hearing, that there are also designs potentially to develop this entire corner of the Country Homes and Wall intersection. And in my mind, I'm supportive of development. I think that that would be a potentially great area for appropriate housing. But appropriate housing on that corner is not high density, potentially high rise apartment type living. Some more cottage type housing or multi-purpose housing, multi-unit housing could be very appropriate and honestly very welcomed in the neighborhood. And so my request today is that not only do you put forward a no now, but you put forward a no vote against this application with strong recommendation that this entire corner be significantly examined in the 2026 review of the entire plan for the county. Because again, this is a cornerstone issue. It is a keystone to the further development of this entire North Wall corridor, from Country Homes all the way up to Hawthorne and then further onto Mill Road towards the intersection with Hastings. So I just ask that you turn this application down at this time, and also considerably question the opportunity for development of this particular area in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Commissioners? Did you like to speak? Okay, please come forward. You'll need to fill out a yellow slip before you leave the building, but yeah, just so you're on the record, that's all.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm Mercedes Perez, and I live on Jefferson, which is the corner of Jefferson and Price and Mountain View. And I've lived there for over 20 years and raised all my children. It's a wonderful, unique environment. I didn't feel like we really highlighted the fact that water on his property is both facing his property on the west, and then it wraps around when it pulls out into the wetland, and it's facing on the north. So it's surrounding his corner on several sides. Now the west side where the stream enters into the pool, that side, I know he's going to have, we didn't talk about the fact that he's got, restrictions about 15 feet, up to the stream, but also the fact that it's lower level, and that is not going to support any kind of building structure. So no one really mentioned how much acreage is actually buildable on this. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, you already have an easement at 15 feet, and then you're going to have another unbuildable space because of the low level that you see it going low level down, as it approaches the water. So, we're easily, in my mind, thinking 0.60 acres here of actual buildable space. And I agree with Meredith that we would probably welcome a townhome or a townhouse, on that corner. But, to have that much people sitting on top of surrounding water of delicate wildlife, just isn't suitable for the area that we've cultivated in our neighborhoods, and we enjoy the wildlife. Several neighbors have sent pictures of both a bull moose and several, we've got coyotes and heron over there, and it's just a wonderful little preservation. We are several of us, all of us have those wonderful, car stickers. This is the Great Pacific Northwest, and I feel like we should always be keeping that in mind, that the reason we all live here is because it is the Great Pacific Northwest, and we love our mountains and our streams and our wildlife and our ponds, and people come here to visit and travel and admire the surroundings that we live in, and to see that our community is also protecting those environments while we build, So we hope you consider that wildlife situation in the water surrounding this particular area. And thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in this audience, online, or on this commission? If not, let me close public testimony. Are there any objections to closing public testimony? Seeing none, public testimony on this matter is now closed. We are now deliberation phase.
Mr. Chairman, let me add just a little bit.
Please do.
The concerns that you've heard are all valid, to be sure. As with many of these projects, what you're considering is a land action, not a development proposal. And so it's easy to think, and even in our planning work, we have to think of what is the biggest possible impact of this with SEPA mitigations, for example. But this is a land action. And as the last speaker noted, there are significant environmental conditions, critical area conditions on this, so that it will have limits in terms of what it will be able to develop in any case. Even if it is some sort of multi-tenant or multi-family project, those will have parking requirements. Those will have open space requirements. It simply can't envision itself as a downtown building that is built out to the property lines. That said, the other point that was made online, considering the area in the 2026 update is on our horizon, as is all of the build out and buildable areas in our world. So we will be looking at this in a comprehensive way from now until working with you on recommendations to bring it into a 2026 recommendation. So there are options here, but I did want to just remind you that you're being asked to consider a land action today, not envision a development proposal.
I've got a question, Scott. We need affordable housing. And we're seeing significant movement from our legislatures and city people are struggling with budgets. We need to address this kind of problem. And I guess my question to you is there any part of the comp plan process that we're going to go through that's going to discuss this kind of infill? Because I see if we're going to accomplish what the city calls BOCA, what the county's got their infill with ADUs and whatnot, are we going to be any brighter about this problem after we finish our comp plan than we are today? I know from having been in this chair a long time that when you change a neighborhood, people show up and they voice their opinion, and I respect that. I'm just saying we've also got an obligation to provide housing. And so how will this be addressed between now and January 1, 2027?
Optimistically, yes, we will be looking at the difference between approving individual or small groups of parcels on a plan amendment basis long after the plan was done, into looking at providing a development pattern that is more flexible to the market over time, but also builds in what we call performance standards, so that it has, one way of thinking of it is buffers, or another way is if something is going to go in, it has some ability to integrate itself with the character of the neighborhood into which it's going, even if it's going to be 4 units or 6 units instead of 1. So it's absolutely on our work plan to move that forward, both for infill projects and also for things on the urban growth edge. Too often, and not to get off track, but too often projects in the urban growth area are nothing more than 40-acre, 20-acre subdivisions of 50 or 100 platted lots. We're going to try to create a system that encourages better connections and the ability of trying to create smaller neighborhood issues on these edges. And that's going to apply kind of like an infill philosophy as well. So the long answer to your question is this is very much on our work plan for the coming year.
Thank you. Thank you. At this point, the chair will entertain a motion to approve comprehensive plan amendment 02-24. Following that proper procedure, we will then have discussion and then vote. Do I hear?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. Motion to recommend to the County Board of Commissioners approval of comprehensive plan amendment 02-24.
We'll need a second. We'll need a, thank you, Logan. We need a second. Second by Pete Rayner. Discussion on the motion, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna vote in favor of this. I understand that there's folks who are frustrated about this, but we spent a lot of time analyzing the lot that's basically across the street to the south, and there's a couple lots in between. But the 3 sides of this corner have high density residential zoning already. Seems like an appropriate place for this kind of development. I think that almost all of the concerns that have been addressed or that have been brought to the surface will be addressed during the permitting process. And so, there'll be a SEPA process, and so I think, well, if it meets a threshold, there'll be a SEPA process. And so I'm going to support this.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Again, being the old timer, I do recall what the GMA and what the understanding of what it was at the time was to take a lot of our areas and use them as infill. And again, which only makes sense because we've got roads, water, all the infrastructure already in. And so, but what no one has said, yes, you have all this new development and high rise all around it, but why hasn't this one been done? It's because of the sensitivity that may be existing that has prevented it from happening and not being able to do it. I'm not opposed to multifamily or greater density to give us some use of our land, but not every piece of property can be developed in that same manner. You have to go on a case by case. That's why this piece is still sitting there, because it has sensitivity. And so I'm going to be open and honest, say I would be opposed to it. So that for that very reason, I'm not opposed to what's to happen. I'm opposed to this particular piece is what I'm opposed to. Sorry for being so positive about it.
Mr. Chairman, I concur with Clyde. I look at that area and I look at the development and everything that is there. And the choice is acknowledging the fact that we're going to continue to grow and more people are going to be accessing that area. That all we're going to do is make it more difficult. And I see and have been up there and looked and I go, I think it needs to be not put into that new category and developed because of all the other things that are occurring within that area that are making it difficult for people who live there. So I have to really concur with Clyde. I did go up and I checked it and I looked and I go, and you're right, there's other areas that within there that are very developed. And I just see that other one is just making it much more complicated for the entire community. So thank you.
If you take a look at what's there on the sides that are high density, it's on this side. The other side where this piece of property is, there's houses in there that are 100 years old almost. This side over here has, I believe, a daycare. There's a dentist office over here on this side, but this side is people's homes and community. I would be fine with a duplex or something, you know, but I'm in agreement with Mr. Brokaw and Mr. Hasse on this.
I guess I'll just say I don't really understand the difference. We approved, you know, it doesn't look, it's not there yet, but we approved high density residential on the southwest corner of this. That's gonna be like, you know, they already told us their plans and they don't have site development challenges and they're gonna build big. At least that's what that's the intent that they signaled to us. So I just have a hard time understanding what's so much different about this lot that's like, you know, an eighth of a mile away or something, not even. Like, I mean, you could hit it, I can throw a football from one lot to the other.
Pete, comments?
I wish our procedures or policies allowed the developer to bring what he wants to build there to this process. I mean, and I hope we resolve that between now and 2026, because there's a lot of things you can do with multifamily that you can't do with medium density and you can't do with low density. And
Right.
I would vote against this just to defer it until 2026. I visited a lot of communities that have got a lot of infill, and it's really nice to have to yield to baby carriages and people on bicycles and walking their kids, and that comes from density that isn't 75 foot, 12,000 square foot lots. So, I mean, coming up with something really clever, but I can appreciate maybe we're not ready yet.
Everyone has spoken. I'm going to speak again. If not, we're ready for the vote. All those in favor of 02-24, let's do a roll call vote, since there seems to be some varying opinions here. We'll start with Logan. Yay or
Aye.
nay? Aye.
Nay.
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 The chair will vote aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to number 3.
Please, I'd like to open the
Go ahead.
public hearing without objection.
This is the 2-lot parcel common ownership that you have seen before on the Hastings Farwell corridor. It is bringing in new residents from higher density, in this case, particularly seniors project that was being planned for it. No public comments were received on this earlier, or at least by mail. And it is in this area. So we would ask that you entertain any public comments, and we'd be happy to address them.
We have no yellow slips for this. Are there anybody would like to give public testimony online or in this audience? Pardon me?
Wasn't the first time that you lady had?
Lisa. I'm asking if anybody online, is she still there?
Yes.
Lisa, now is your time. 03?
Thank you. I'm concerned about this project. I'm glad to see that there's some concept of senior living there, but we have 5 projects on a 1-mile strip along Farwell and Hastings. The roads are already overcrowded, dangerous to cross if you don't have a light. People are getting more and more agitated, and it looks like the apartment complex, a 3-story at the corner of Farwell and Pittsburgh, has 144 units and not sufficient parking. And that is going to spill out into the neighborhood. And that's causing problems with our own parking. You go maybe 100 feet to the west, and now they're proposing 72 more units, it's just become too high density. There's too many projects going on a 1 mile strip of land. We need,
Does that come-
we
go ahead.
need to have the sheriffs continue to run up and down Farwell. They've been increasing their presence over the last maybe 3 to 6 months, but it's going to get even worse. People are actually being very aggressive on that road. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else online would like to testify? No one in the audience? Commissioners? During the public testimony area, would anybody like to chime in?
Nope. Motion to recommend for approval, comprehensive plan amendment 03-24 to the Board of County Commissioners, and I'm looking for a second.
I'd like to close the public testimony without objection. Fine. And now we have a motion on the floor, and there's made by Logan, seconded by Pete Rayner. Discussion on the motion of 03-24.
I'm going to support this motion for a lot of reasons. Number one, it meets the criteria we've set forth. We desperately need housing, but we really also desperately need senior housing. And this is a proposal that will have a lesser impact. It's proven on the neighborhood and a lot of the issues that were just addressed than other kinds of multifamily. And I support it.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of Scott. The type of zoning that is being looked for here, there are classification do we have a classification in the county for senior housing only or for continued care? Or
We
how
do
is it
not.
described?
We do not.
So then, Mr. Raymer, you were saying for senior, but they could change their mind.
It could.
I didn't want to get out that that's going to be senior housing when we really can't control that.
That's
Is
correct.
that right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clyde.
I'm gonna support this. There's already high density residential all around it. Yes, they're not bound to it, but the applicant's intent, the owners, the parcel owner is like, Senior Homes of America, I think. So yeah, things happen, but their intention is to build senior housing, and they have a trip generation letter already that showed not a significant number of trips and cars. So I'm gonna support this.
Any other comments from the commission before we go for the vote? Are you ready for the vote? And let's do the vote by roll call, please, starting with Logan.
Aye.
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 And aye. That vote is unanimous. Next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
0424.
This is again in that same area on the east side of Farwell Road up against the BNSF North-South Railroad, a light industrial piece from earlier days being requested into medium density residential. So it will be potentially 124 population count that could be served there if it was built at that level. There have been comments about this in terms of many typical things, safety and traffic there. Again, one reminder, impacts that are related to traffic and other things are handled at the development stage with trip generation letters and traffic and road mitigations to handle traffic that comes in. So again, we don't know specifically what's being proposed here, but those things are handled as they go forward. Two important things, though, both water and sewer. There's no sewer within 600 feet of this now, and what's there is a dry pipe waiting for some future hookup. That would have to be a condition before any building permits would be issued. And as you can see from Water District 3, they're not prepared to offer their concurrency at this stage either. So while those are not necessarily a factor in your decision on a land use change, those are significant considerations before this can actually develop.
For the record, I'd like to open public testimony on a 04-24, which I
Yes.
failed to do before you gave your comment, but needless to say, without objection, we are now in public hearing mode.
And if I remember correctly, the applicant last meeting acknowledged that fact and knows that the
Yes.
applicant and the potential developer is aware that they would have to meet this requirement before any kind of building permit could move forward.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a concern, and it's only because I've experienced this morning. Traffic in Spokane is not getting any better. I'm totally convinced of that. And I'm really interested to know, what is the traffic study, or has there been one made for that area? Because that road is just a 2-lane road going through the middle of Meade.
Yeah.
And it's a real bypass, and
I would refer you back to the staff report that has the summary of the analysis from our traffic folks upstairs, as well as any comments from DOT that did not offer any objection to moving this forward at this time.
But that
One thing
didn't
that-
quite answer my question, but I guess I should take it for the answer.
One thing, you could assume, and when there is higher density development on older roads like that, one clear mitigation is often that the road must be brought up to contemporary standards to handle the traffic volume. So in addition to extending a sewer and getting a water commitment, it's very likely that when this is developed, one of the SEPA mitigations is going to be that significant road improvements, and that could include signalized intersections if warranted.
We do not know what the conditions would be yet, do we?
No, we do not.
Thank you.
Here again, we're just changing the zoning classification.
Correct.
The work will begin with the development process and the entries by the various departments. Am I right about that, Scott?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, more comments from the commission or from the public? Now would be the time to make your comments. Anybody online, Ron? No? The commissioners during the public hearing process, someone's online? Okay, good, we'll hear from them.
Can you hear me now?
We
Yes.
can. Thank you.
Ben Goodmanson, Whipple Consulting Engineers. I am the applicant for this amendment. And I just wanted to reiterate, we are aware of the water and sewer requirements that will accompany this development, and we are preparing for those, as I mentioned last time I stood before you. This is just how things are kind of progressing and developing along the lines as we try to meet the housing demands. We feel that this property was set as light industrial in error, that it should be a residential zoning. And at this opportunity, we would prefer to change it to medium density residential as opposed to low density residential, as we are trying to meet the requirements of housing in the Spokane County. With that, if you have any questions, I'd be willing to answer those.
Thank you. Additional testimony, please. No one else online? Thank you. What's that line? What's that feedback? Oh, okay. Commissioners, public hearing process, no?
I'm trying to wrap myself around it at this point, going from low density to high density and having all these issues that we don't have any idea of what would be resolutions, the water, the sewer, et cetera. And I look at that public comments chart that Scott had up there a couple minutes ago. I don't know if are we premature in approving this at this time based on a lot of the questions that are hanging out there. Again, going from low density to high density, where we don't have any consideration of medium density or anything until we have more answers. I'm I'd like more, maybe Scott,
Let
if you
me,
could help me.
let me clarify. It's going from a light industrial zone to a medium density zone. So they're not asking for high density, but they are asking for a residential designation instead of a light industrial designation.
Yeah, for me, it feels like, you know, in order to be willing to put the money forward to make this pretty significant improvement, which sounds like is required to develop, you know, the developer needs some kind of assurance that they can build to a certain level on the site. It's a challenging site, the applicants admitted. And I think, you know, the medium density designation allows them to be a little bit more creative with the footprint of the buildings and, you know, managing the proximity to the railroad tracks. They also talked about some sound buffer to the railroad tracks, which I appreciated. So, you know, I think even if this happens, this change, I think there's still a pretty big hurdle to get this project to a build phase. But this is a necessary step.
Wayne, did I answer your question?
I'm the one that's at fault here. I was asleep at the switch and I was
Oh, no
reading the
worries.
one above it, number 324. I apologize.
We're out of coffee, and that's probably part of the reason. We need more coffee for Wayne over here. He was asleep at the switch. I just heard that. And so yeah, right. So I don't want anybody to be asleep at the switch. That's a bad look on the commission. With no one else online, no one else in the audience, without objection, public testimony is hereby closed on 04-24. Chair will entertain a motion for approval of 04-24.
I'll make the motion again. I move for a recommending approval to the Board of County Commissioners for Comprehensive Plan Amendment 04-24, and I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Lonnie. Discussions in order on the motion. See no discussion. Everybody for the vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Gloria's not here. She's on the coffee mission, but did somebody make a note of that? Scott, you
Yes.
made, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I hope
Moving
she's
on.
not insulted. I said that. She's a fine person. So we don't have to be asleep at the switch though. All right.
Moving on to Amendment 5.
Let me open the public testimony in 05-24. Okay.
Thank you.
Without objection.
This is, as you recall, on the north side of the city of Spangle, converting some lands within their designated urban growth area, but are currently zoned rural, traditional into regional commercial. The intent is a small retail operation of some kind, similar. The analogy was similar to some of the stands in Green Bluff and other small gathering opportunities. The limiting factor here is again water and sewer, and this will be subject to a development agreement. And we've looked at 3 broad categories that'll be part of that. One is they can only develop in that small scale footprint that was described in the application that can be served by well and septic in the interim. Anything beyond that has to wait until it can be served by municipal water and sewer. And then the obvious other part is all the parties, including we have added the city of Spangle to the development agreement, at least in principle, so that they have a chance to weigh in on both timing and execution of this. The way this works, if you recommend approval to the board, the development agreement will be crafted. And the development agreement is a contract between the county and the applicant, so it goes directly to the Board of County Commissioners. We will prepare that. It will be presented concurrently with this in the briefing and action sessions. And it will be written in such a way that the development agreement cannot go into effect prior to the comprehensive plan amendment passing its appeal period, or if there are appeals, until the appeal process is exhausted. The reason for that is you do not want a development agreement to vest before or while there are still risks of overturning a comprehensive plan. And so this process ties those two together so they happen simultaneously. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we'd open for questions.
We have a public testimony available for 05-24. Anyone in the audience would like to come forward? Dwayne? Dwight? Keep an eye on our board up there too. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dwight Hume, I'm here on behalf of the applicant, and I really wanted to point out to you that we did turn in a letter from the law firm we've retained for the purpose of drafting that development agreement, and it basically reassuring to the town of Spangle that we will not go forward above and beyond the capacity of the well and its service as we for the other phases of commercial development. They're just saying, hey, we don't have water, we don't have sewer right now. We don't want you having control over us saying, hey, we want to do something more, give us the water and sewer. No, we're not going to do that to them. And and so the development agreement will reassure them of that. They'll have a chance to review it. I don't know whether our legal counsel will want their signature to a development agreement, but we're ready, just waiting to see the outcome of this. This is a UGA area, has been from the inception of the county's comprehensive plan. And it's time to do something to get a spark of growth. There's strong interest in what we had. You heard at the last hearing, public testimony from one council member begging you to allow this, but nothing more until water and sewer are available, and we certainly agree. So this just says same thing we've been saying all along. We'll and so it can go into the record if you want. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dwight.
I have a question, Dwight.
Oh,
I think you can ask.
okay.
It seemed like last time you were in front of us, or someone was in front of us about this, there was a point I didn't quite understand why they haven't dug the well yet, but yet there's water and sewer. How do the two blend together? Why is one not why are they doing their own well? I don't understand this whole thing.
Let me jump in, and
I'm sorry,
it's a GMA factor. By GMA, you're generally prohibited from having wells and septic systems within an urban growth area. This is an exception because the municipality is unable to serve it right now. And the county has a flow chart of about 9 steps you can go through to say, you know, and down to the first 5 is like, no, you can't connect to septic. You have to wait or pay the cost of providing municipal services. And then the last 3 give you options to connect to urban or to rural services, with the caveat that when the urban services are available, you must connect. So yeah, there's a disconnect. Sorry, a different word of use of disconnect, but the general principle is you cannot drill a well for separate service in an urban growth area. If that helps.
Didn't understand that one.
Comments? We had a council person last time from the city of Spangle on the line. No one has a raised hand. No one in the audience wishes to address this. Without objection, public hearing, public testimony is closed. Let's have a motion for 05-24, and then we'll discuss it. Lonnie, why don't you make it?
Make the motion. I'm for it.
Okay. Second by Pete. Discussion on the motion, please. Seeing the discussion, are we ready for the vote? And we'll do roll call again, starting with Logan.
Aye.
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 Aye. That motion has passed. That recommendation has been passed unanimously. Thank you. I'd like to open public hearing for comprehensive amendment from last year, 12-23. Scott? I think that's next. Yeah.
This is the project proposed for 2 lots on North Mill Road, about 2.5 acres plus. The basic differences from low density to medium density allows for a increase of potential units and residential population. You've heard quite extensive public comments on this, both related to traffic, some related to sewer. Lewis Graff from the county's wastewater, he was here to talk about how that would be ameliorated by hooking to a different interceptor and other things about neighborhood character. And so we are here today before you to take any further testimony and have you make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. And Mr. Chairman, with that, we are happy to stand aside and let you take any remaining testimony.
Testimony is now available from the public. Anyone in the audience would like to come forward? Is there anyone online? Please raise your hand for 12-23. I'll ask for the commissioners if they have any comments during the public testimony. We have one? Okay, great. That's why you're here. Good, thanks.
Ben Goodmanson, Whipple Consulting Engineers. I am the applicant for this proposed amendment and just wanted to ask that you approve this amendment and be able to allow it to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Have I missed anyone? Going once, going twice. Chair will, without objection, close the public hearing. I need a motion. 12-23, please, for recommendation.
I'll make the motion. I move that we recommend to the Board of County Commissioners approval of comprehensive plan amendment 12-23. And I'm looking for a second.
Mr. Chairman, could I suggest a slight revision to that language?
Sure.
Your action is perhaps more appropriately to affirm your prior vote to
sure.
recommend approval.
Yes, that's correct. Because as you'll remember, we already voted for approval of this in 2023. So I will amend my language. I move that we affirm our previous approval of comprehensive plan amendment 12-23 and send it to the Board of County Commissioners for consideration. And I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Lonnie. Thank you, Logan. Discussion from the commissioners on this motion.
I mean, I'm just going to say I'm going to support this again. We've kind of talked about this one a lot of times, but I like to say why I'm supporting things, and I've made that pretty clear on the record, and I'm supported again.
Further discussion? Clyde, you look puzzled. No talking. Are you ready for the vote? Starting with Logan.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. That is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then to reiterate, we're the summary of what the cumulative impacts are, why they're important. You can see, although it's hard to see on the smaller parts of the slide, levels of service and benchmark standards we use to evaluate new growth intensity, balancing that against capacities of wastewater treatment capacity, water capacity, road, and other things. There are kind of these 6 bullet points on why these are done. And what we're reminding ourselves is one of the reasons the county has been out of compliance with GMA is it previously did not link its capital facilities plan to the comprehensive plan. And by Growth Management Act requirements, they must have, well, concurrency, they must be linked. We have cured that in 22 and 23. And now in 24, we're able to do that analysis and say to you that this does not degrade the standards of our current capacity. And so that's also why I wanted to summarize that before you started, so you had that in mind as you considered each of these. There's nothing to vote on here. This is, at one point it was put on as an amendment. That was just a mistake on the agenda. There's nothing we're asking you to vote on. We just wanted to make sure you understood that as you voted on the other pieces. And I'm happy to take questions or we can move on.
No questions? All right, let's move on. Want to open up our public hearing.
Right.
For ZTA -01-23, an amendment to change the zoning definition of gun and archery range.
Flip to the other side.
And this is a
Yes.
reaffirmation, how's a
Uh,
change?
Mr. Chairman, before we start on this public hearing for the ZTA 01-23, we would ask you for a motion to reconsider your vote at the last meeting to approve. And we're doing this so that we can reopen discussion and talk specifically about some concerns related to buffering concessions and distance concessions.
As a procedural matter, Chair will entertain a motion for reconsideration.
I think that we can only do that if there's a majority of those who voted on the previous motion present. Is that the case?
Anyone could make a motion to reconsider if you were on the prevailing side of the previous motion.
Cool. I was on the prevailing side. I'll make a motion to reconsider our previous vote on ZTA 01-23. And I'm looking for a second.
Second?
Second.
From Lonnie Edwards. Any discussion on the motion? If not,
Yeah, I'll have a little discussion. I mean,
Yep.
I have two things on my mind here. I'm a little bit hesitant to open this back up because obviously I see the applicant has given us a letter from attorney saying that they have a problem with some of the language. But also, I see that there's been a recommendation from an agency that we need to make some changes. And so I think that it's probably best to do that, and try to get things right.
This noise buffer, it's, if you're a gun owner or not a gun owner or whatnot, definitely we need to have a discussion on this because sound travels, but we got to help them find the right property here to make something happen, make something work. I know this is a touchy subject for a lot of people, but we have to do our best up here to help.
Thank you, Lonnie.
I'll reinstate what I had stated some time ago, 2-3 months ago. I live out towards Micah. And I live by air, straight by a bird, in excess of between 1 and 2 miles. I'm not gonna be real exact. And the sound, I can hear it whenever it's happening. So we have to be realistic. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, how far does the sound travel? Good days, it's good. Last night I heard some thunder. The other night, I didn't hear any thunder. It just depends. So distance is a big item, but I don't just say, well, it's got to be, I can't hear it.
Mr. Chairman.
Quiet area.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, we're only asking you to reopen debate. We
That's
don't have a
correct.
recommendation for you right now.
But it sounds like there's sufficient interest in doing that, so. Let's have a
well, it's
vote.
traditional for discussion on any motion, but this is a pretty perfunctory and I understand the logic. Are we ready to vote on the reconsideration? Starting with Logan.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Oh, I probably should abstain too, because I wasn't at that meeting.
Oh.
I wasn't either. That was last meeting.
No, not the
This-
last one before.
Oh, okay, I was there.
The very two things you voted on when I was out are now being reconsidered.
Well, only
That should
one.
teach me for not going on vacation, I guess. All right, never mind. All right. So, yeah, there's four, so there's,
There
three
were,
people.
there were 4 votes in favor and 1 abstention, and the chairman has yet to vote.
I think it signaled his intent to abstain.
He withdrew. Oh, there's only 3 votes.
Okay.
I forget our rules. Do we need just a simple majority of those who are here or do we need? I can check Robert's rules. I have it in my backpack, but.
No, typically, a tie vote on a motion fails.
But it's not a tie vote because they're abstaining, so. It's
And
not
that-
truly
and
a
that's-
tie.
You're right. I'm sorry. That's a good point.
Thank
So
you.
in that case, it would be approved three
It's
to.
basically 3-0.
nothing.
So I just don't know if our rules, I think that works in our rules. I'm pretty sure. So.
Good. Thank you for the reminder. So we've seen the gun club background. I'm sorry.
Stop. Just a little clarification from the chair here.
Yes.
So that motion
Passed.
passed
Thank you.
for the record. Okay.
Thank you. If you'd like to
Now,
open,
please.
open a public hearing on
That's
this.
how they did, but
Okay.
to belabor the fact, the public testimony is now open for this item, CTA 01-23.
We've seen the background on this, left it up here for anybody that might be watching. The transition from the gun club on their historic site has been now for a few years, and they're looking for a new site, but also looking for a better definition in the county zoning code on what that gun club would be. There we go. So currently, the statement in quotes is all that is there in terms of very limited review criteria. The definition currently is the first part or the first sentence. The suggested revisions or additions are underlined. Generally, it allows for a wider exchange of use than simply a target zone. It allows for multi-day events. It allows for amenities and other facilities to take place as part of that. What has been proposed for the conditions includes changing the basic size, adding these which have not been considered controversial, this first 5. These were the last ones that were presented to you, including G, H, and I, which were recommended as amendments in your last meeting. What's being suggested is we've just highlighted a new G and H. And this is a starting point for discussion. We're going to certainly let the applicant come up, and before you also have a letter from their attorney suggesting that there is no basis in the RCW to impose a noise restraint on shooting ranges because they're specifically excluded from noise complaints. Nonetheless, we've looked at this, staff has looked at best practices from other areas, and we've put down essentially a 2-part version, one that says if you have a big enough piece of land or far enough away, you can get by with little improvements, but you're going to have a 2-mile buffer instead of a 1-mile buffer from those areas. The second is you can reduce that to a 1/2 mile if you build in performance issues or performance barriers like berms, fences, walls, topography. In other words, to reduce the impact and safety of the gun range. So we have put those out for your consideration, and we would like to, and what we'd like to do today is have you make comments, take any testimony that we may have. We would ask that you continue this to October 17th so that these can be fully reviewed by the public, and then we would come back to you for a potential action.
And we'll leave the public hearing open.
Yes.
A testimony, rather. Yeah.
Yes. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we're happy to take questions.
We have an applicant here.
Yes.
No time limit for the applicant.
Good morning. I'm Tom Nihule, president of the Spokane Gun Club. This is the first I've heard of the 2 miles. Quite frankly, it's ridiculous. It is totally unacceptable. If you look at in the state of Washington, if you go to the town of Issaquah, you will find Issaquah High School, and you'll find the Issaquah Sportsman's Club. By street, it's 7/10 of a mile away. By land or flight, it's probably less than 1/3 of a mile. Now, when they're up, I don't know, but they're there and they're working. To turn around and put a 2-mile radius on this is basically it takes us out of Spokane County. And if that's what you want, then, that's fine. We'll go look elsewhere. We want to be in Spokane County, but we really need to have that distance as 0 as it was before.
and go from there and look at what the state code says on sound restrictions and time from 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. With the exceptions for gun clubs, it's number 2 on the list that the state of Washington passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Dwight?
Dwight Hume on the record. Mr. Chesney referred to our legal counsel. They have copies of this? Okay. And so once again, you have a legal, a letter clarifying that both the Spokane County Code and the state law, the WAC, as it relates to noise, specifically exempts shooting ranges, approved shooting ranges, from the noise ordinance from 7 in the morning until 10 at night. That should put to bed the Airway Heights letter and any friendly motions that were made for half mile, 1 mile, etc. None of that applies because we are exempt under noise. And I have said before to this panel, it's the hearing examiner's job to look at the reality of the request, a specific site, notices out, attendance to talk about it from the surrounding neighborhood, if any, and to examine the ability to do this. As we mentioned at the last meeting, the graphics department has produced a map that shows what those proposed changes are, and a half mile, 1 mile, and those are moot now, now that we've discovered the WAC. So please let us go forward. Right now, I would say we go back to the staff report that was brought before you before the friendly amendments were made, and use that as your proposed information for the amendment to the text of the code. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwight.
I just want to say, I think that's a mischaracterization, first of all, of our actions. And I think the letter from the attorneys is sort of a mischaracterization as well. I think it oversimplifies the reasons for the buffers that were suggested, oversimplifies that there was no reasons given for the buffers. It's actually kind of a little bit of gaslighting in the letter here. And it's a little disappointing, but so I think that the way the applicant just presented it is not accurate. The WAC does not make the changes moot, and I want to make that very clear.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it's also probably useful to recognize that we don't want to conflate simply a noise ordinance or a nuisance ordinance with buffers for other reasons. You can see that it does say sound suppression measures, and perhaps that's something we should consider, but there can be other reasons to have buffers. Clearly the gun club had the world grow up around it in its original location, and it worked. It doesn't necessarily mean that an urban form, like the president mentioned, being next to a high school, is desirable in the future. Again, that's why we do want to keep this open. We want to take more testimony, but it's entirely your recommendation on how you wish to add any constraints to the operation of a gun club. And just to reiterate, from planning department perspective, we respect the need for and the use of a gun club and the ability to do these multi-day events. It's something that is absolutely a part of Spokane County culture. We are an urban and a rural county. There is no indication of anything but support for the general part of this moving forward. It's back to the devil in the details in terms of what parameters do you wish to add to that code for the hearing examiner to take into account.
Could I ask just like a couple other questions? Why does staff think that this solution, and I'm not saying I disagree, I'm hoping for some more clarity on why this solution is better, the sort of varied choices here. Obviously, it seems like the applicant doesn't like it better. Can you just give some thoughts on why staff thinks that this version is better than the previous version?
Yes, the rationale, there are two parts. One is we dropped any boundary limits from the archery ranges because they didn't seem reasonable. The second is it was thought that if buffering, if other protective safety range measures were put in place, the 1 mile prohibition could safely be reduced to half a mile, which would open up quite a lot more land for development. Sorry. For example, that map on the right is what looks like if we put the buffers on that were approved by the Planning Commission last time. You can see those are increments in half miles. So the outer side is the 1 mile buffer from parks, schools, urban areas. And then the crosshatched areas are like rural traditional zoning where it currently would not be allowed in any case. So you can see there's a pretty serious restriction, and we just blew up a smaller part of that on the west side, north of Airway Heights and Fairchild and west of the state park. Those buffers create quite a lot of land that is ineligible for that. We thought that might be too restrictive for providing that. So we thought if we can reduce it to that half mile, but include some performance measures, that might be a reasonable compromise.
This map is showing the previous constraints. Did you also drop a map showing I know it's harder to draw up because, but did you drop one just with half a mile and what that would look like?
It's in progress. I'm sorry to say we just couldn't get it produced in time for this meeting.
Understood. Another question on sort of the legal issue. I didn't see this letter before this morning, so I'm just trying to digest it on the dais, which is obviously difficult. Has Jessica, if she's still our legal representative, had a chance to review this? And is it possible that she could be here to answer questions next time we have, or some legal representative next time we have this item on our agenda?
Yes, we will review it in detail and have our assessment back to you as quick as we can.
I appreciate that.
Having just completed the Spokane Interstate Fair, and while there for the 11 days, having discussions with different people, I didn't find anyone that is a rancher that has heard from any of you in regards to the possibility of any part of their ranch being able to be used to set this up in any way, shape, or form, that they had not heard. And I guess one of my questions would be that, hearing everything you've heard from the public and the concerns, the consideration of talking to Spokane County ranchers who have the land that would be available, and if they would be interested in working with you in regards to developing this shooting range. No one had heard about it that I had talked to in the ranches within the county. So I was curious if that is something you've given any thought to in contacting any of the ranchers that have lots of property and, acreage where this could potentially be put together.
Oh, sure.
We have been looking now for 4 years for property. We have talked to ranchers. We have talked to, I've been contacted by a number of different ones that when we looked at them, the first thing they said was, when you sold your club, you got $8 million. So you got a lot of money to buy land. And so, yes, they want to talk to us, but they want a highly premium price. If you look down here at the big green area, that's Turnbull. I had a gentleman call me earlier this year. He's got 500 acres that would absolutely be perfect for us. The problem is Turnbull, because somebody had tried to set up a sporting clays course to the east of that, and Turnbull shut them down because migratory birds fly over that. Well, be fairly direct, when we were out at Green Acres, we had geese fly into on our property and sit down while we were shooting. So they're a migratory bird. If we could get around Turnbull and get them to support us, that would work. That would be a great piece of property. But he also said, well, I know you got $8 million. And we really don't have $8 million. We got a lot of development costs to put in a club. We are looking in southern Spokane County right now. We've talked to a number of different people that have all come up with a number of different, number of very high prices in the $3 to $4 million range. So we are continually looking at that. We had a meeting last Tuesday where there's a piece of property. I don't know exactly where it is, and I don't know who the owner is. But one of them that I do know was right outside of Rockford, that with the restrictions that you put out there, wipe that property out. So that's that's our problem. And if you turned around and said you go to 1/2 mile, that probably will help things out. If you went to the 2 mile restriction, Scott, I'd love to see a map that shows that, but it's going to be a pretty pink map, and we're not going to be able to do anything. So that's where we're at. We are looking. We have talked to multiple real estate agents, looking for property that people want to sell. The problem with a lot of southern Spokane County is that it's all rolling good wheatland. And while that might be good for us, it's not gonna, what they make off that land, over many, many years is not gonna work. So what we're looking for is land that is generally scab land, or where they're grazing cattle, not growing wheat and barley. That's one of the big issues. So if you know of a farmer out there or a rancher that wants to talk to us, I would talk to him in a heartbeat. We haven't found any yet that works. So that's where we're at. We're looking and have been looking for a long time. Pete?
I just wanted to mention too that, and acknowledging I've abstained from further because of my involvement with the gun club, but we as part of the search committee, we can't really go after a piece of property till we know what our rules are. So we need to finalize this process before we know what we can even talk to landowners about.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick reminder, again, we're not asking for an action or a recommendation today. We're listening, we're taking notes, and we will be asking you to simply continue this to October 17th.
If there are no more public testimony, we do have one, okay. Sharon, you have the floor.
Oh, listen, you're going to postpone. Hi, Sharon Whitehead for the record. You're going to postpone this for further conversation. I think that's a great idea. My comments were going to be around the use of public. I clearly am for what you proposed last time. The concern was around the use of the term public schools, public parks, public cemeteries, because there are private schools, right? And there's about 4 different definitions of cemeteries. So I think you can, if you're going to open this up, we can look at what comes up and deal with it then.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a couple parliamentary points. I busted out Robert's rules. And I'm not sure it really matters, but Robert's rules does say that a motion to reconsider must be made on the same day the original vote was taken or on the next succeeding day within the same session on which a business meeting is held. It's section 37(8)(b). I'm not sure it really matters. I think that all of us intend to continue discussing this issue. And so I think we're in the right to make that move anyways. But I just want to point that out, that Robert's rules seems to disagree with the way we proceeded earlier. But it does also say that debating the motion to reconsider, Clyde, when we were doing that, it was appropriate to debate the actual issue at hand. We can go fully into the merits of the question. And so that was appropriate.
So you make a motion to continue the testimony?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, I think it was all of our intent to do that. And so But yeah, I just want to point out that motion is complicated and not sure that we're in the bounds.
Motion's been made to continue. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, it was really just a parliamentary point of information from
Thank
me.
you.
That's really all I was trying to do.
You, if you were asked to rule on this, you could, but I would suggest that this is in fact the day after you took your last action.
I think that's a reasonable interpretation too.
Is there a second to continue?
Second.
Second, okay. Without objection, we can continue this. No one else objects? We'll continue and leave the public testimony open.
Did you say if it would be next meeting, Scott, or
Yes,
what?
October 17th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Logan.
Last on our agenda is the small scale meat processing facility, which you've seen before.
Let me open the public hearing for
Yes.
that, please. ZTA 01-24, creating zoning code to allow small scale meat processing facilities in rural Spokane County. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you heard in prior discussions, there are two basic criteria by which this can happen outside of county regulations. One is under the State Department of Agriculture, the other is under the USDA. The USDA was preferred by our applicants and by those in the business because that's what that standard allows for inspections to allow for retail sales of the beef from the small scale slaughterhouse. So this would be a conditional use in large and small tract ag and in rural traditional, prohibited in other areas. You've seen these standards before. There was no objection to this. What you can see in item G is what was suggested by Fish and Wildlife last time that relates to some performance issues. We've incorporated them and published this before your consideration. And with that, we would take any questions or public testimony that you may find.
Anyone in the audience or online or the commission?
If there's no public comment, just that I support this and ready to move forward with it. I love the comment from the from the individual who, one of the proponents who said that he thought we were done with this and doesn't have time to come down again. I just think that's hilarious. Like, first of all, yes, city process, county process, municipal process can be slow. But I think that, it's deliberate for a reason, but I hear his sentiment and I'm eager to see this come to fruition so that they can take advantage of it.
The result of this would be to empower this and send it on, or, okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we would ask for, once you've closed public testimony and deliberated, we would ask you for a recommendation to take this to the Board of County Commissioners for approval.
In abundance of clarity, let's ask again, is anyone online? Anyone in the audience? And any more public testimony that would like to be on the record from the commissioners?
I just have a question on the U.S. Department of Agriculture position that we have no choice, but they would all have to fall under the USDA.
Wayne, if they were to wish to sell product at retail, they would have to follow the USDA
I just want to make
rules.
sure that was the sale of it, because if they're not selling, they're just slaughtered for the 4-H FFA kids, then, okay.
Then
I just wanted
that-
to make sure that was true.
Yeah, that would follow
Okay.
or be found under the state ag rules.
Okay.
Further testimony? If not, I will, without objection, close public hearing.
Scott, can I just ask one question? The agenda that we have in front of us, it's showing as this item is a workshop, but it looks like the agenda that was online does show that this was a hearing item, and I just want to make sure that
Public
that's
hearing.
yeah. I just want to make sure that
The
the agenda that went out was accurate.
The agenda published online is accurate.
Great.
We photocopied last month's or the last agenda inadvertently and put it on your desks.
Awesome. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure of that.
Logan asked the same question. I have, but I'm pulling it. I'm only going by what was published from our screen here. So thank you again, that now it's even more clear. Someone will make a motion to make this recommendation for the zoning code to ZTA to 01-24.
So moved.
So moved by Logan.
Second.
Second by Lonnie. Sotto voce. Thank you. I heard that. Small. Discussion on the motion? Are we ready for the vote? We'll start with a roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimously. I think Lori likes the gavel. She always smiles when I hit that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That, for the most part, is the accumulation of a year's worth of effort on most of these projects. We appreciate your diligence and your patience in getting us here. The schedule has the gun club amendment coming back to you on the 17th for reconsideration, and we will bring as well updated information on the wedding venues as best we can distill that from the Supreme Court decision to see what our path forward might look like.
Scott, could I make just a couple specific requests about the gun club?
Sure.
Like I said, I'm interested in Jessica or whatever legal's take is on it. But I'm also interested in, like, basically the assertion in the letter is that you can't make rules around distances from certain types of uses. And I feel like we do that all the time. For certain types of uses. Like, I don't know, just an example that comes to mind is a cannabis shop has these kinds of things. Why can we do it there and not here would be one of my principal questions. And so I'd hope that staff or legal could address, like, what's different about a gun club is sort of what they're asserting in this letter, that you can't set those kind of boundaries in this case. And I feel like we do that all the time with different uses. And so I'm just hoping to understand that a little bit better before we proceed.
We will absolutely be looking at that. Staff had reminded me during our discussion that there's less certainty in the law than may have been presented to us.
That's what I felt like from reading it, even on the surface. So thank you for that.
So these will be back for you in October with the idea that we will take them to the board for their consideration on November 12th. They will, because of timing on the calendar, they'll now be packaged in with the comp plan amendments. So the board briefing, 2 weeks ahead of the 12th will be a fairly extensive session with them to go through all of the comp plan amendments and all of the zoning text amendments. But that will close out most of that for the year. Otherwise,
Staff report?
Otherwise, we are now turning our attention more directly to the Comprehensive Plan 26. We are holding a session today with the last of our consultants to negotiate a scope of work and a budget. I expect we'll have a basic agreement on that before the end of the day today. That will then move us into more of an implementation mode on that. So we will be starting the visioning process in October. And what that is, as we've basically talked about here, is how do we change the patterns of development for areas on our fringe and our infill areas? And Pete, you mentioned the idea of it would be nice to know more about a project while we're taking a land action. Well, in this kind of a system, that performance-based would require it, or put it this way, if you think of what we currently have now as our planned unit development or our planned development zone, which is an overlay to something underneath it, above it rather, that allows for a negotiated settlement of what does open space look like, what do distances look like, what is density, parking, all the amenities. If we build that into our development regs from the beginning and provide flexibility, then someone coming in to ask for something will be able to describe, this is the project I want to build on here, and this is how it fits your regulations. So we'll add a much more granular level of design detail than you see in a traditional land action. We'll be working through that in at least the first quarter or two of 25. We're going to try to hold at least 2 workshops in every one of the commissioners' districts. We will have things before you here. We will probably have some late afternoon sessions to offer comment. So the next 6 months is going to be increasingly busy on that comp plan, and we're going to shift your attention into being part of that planning studio approach. So that's where we're headed over this next little bit. Happy to take any questions about that, and we'll have more of that outlined at our October meeting.
Question?
I guess I'm a little bit, I'm halfway embarrassed, and I would apologize that we can't make a decision or a direction in regards to the wedding venues.
Shut that down.
This is an issue that's been going on for a long, long time. And I do feel that Spokane is Spokane County and not King County. I do realize that there's things to look out for, but you have to move ahead and get these off your plate. And I just feel we need to move forward. Sorry for being so blunt, but that's the way I live my life.
Clyde, we philosophically, we agree. As we have noted from this podium before, what's being proposed is something that we think has value beyond just supporting one or two or 10 small businesses. We think it is something that provides a gathering space, a quality of life in rural areas. That said, we're taking our last case in our settlement agreement to the Growth Management Hearings Board in December. We're expecting a decision from them in February or March, in which case Spokane County will be back in compliance with the Growth Management Act for the first time really since 2005. If we would have simply charged ahead with this, knowing that it was already turned down by the Growth Management Hearings Board in another county and being appealed, we would have set ourselves up for instant litigation all over again. And that's, if you see it coming, it's better to say, let's see what's happening and now see if we can find a way to do this successfully and legally. So that is absolutely why you had to slow down. We just needed to see where the Supreme Court was going.
So what, I should just sit back and say, we're looking for the next 6 months before we'll probably get to a decision on this thing, the way it sounds?
Not necessarily. If the Supreme Court, if that decision has an outright prohibition against any non-ag use in a designated ag district, I would suspect that'll trigger a legislative response. Because, while GMA should protect ag resources, because again, once they're gone, they're gone. To prohibit them at an absolute cost of everything related to even the economic viability of that farm, what's the point of preserving ag if nobody can afford to do it? Yes, the wheels here could grind slowly, but if we can find a path through this in that decision that said this is really narrow to King County and we've got a different set of circumstances here, we'll bring that idea back to you in October. And if that's the case, we could still have something in place by the end of the year that would give our business and farm owners some confidence that they could market their facilities for 2025.
Thank you.
Who brought the case? Just curious.
I think it was, well, it was FutureWise that was the plaintiff, and it was the Friends of the Rural King County or something as one of the defendants, and then the county also stepped in to be a defendant.
Sorry, Pete.
When are we going to see a first rough draft of conceptual growth management boundary expansions?
Well, I could tell you that, but then I'd have to kill you. I'm sorry.
If you don't tell me, I'm going to be threatened to kill you. So I mean,
Here's the process. We talked with that about the steering committee yesterday, and the cities are working on their land capacity analysis. The county is too. We're pretty far along. So is the city of Spokane. Those have to be really presented back to the steering committee at their November meeting. At that November meeting, we'll also have that will give us the basic parameters of, have we used up what we have and how much more do we need? From that point until January would be the discussion of how does that translate to the geography of land and the existing UGA boundary. Is it between January and March, we would expect to refine that. And the goal is to have a public hearing from the steering committee in March or May of next year to make a decision on the UGA.
Is it safe to assume though that the boundary will change?
Yes, the boundary will change. The challenge is it'll change in two ways. the metro core, the I-90 communities are growing and they're pushing some pressure on the edges of their lands. But the density and intensity changes that the cities have made and even the county in 2020 are suggesting that a lot more of the existing lands can be used than previously thought. So it's not, look, it doesn't appear that there's a wholesale, 5,000 acre expansion along the edges of the I-90 corridor. It's going to be very selective. It's going to be where the capital facilities are in place and can support that. It will be where the path of development makes it likely that this could develop, and even to property owners who are willing to develop as opposed to those that have historically decided to hold property forever. What that also means is for the communities that currently have urban growth areas that are still zoned rural or industrial, without some demonstrated statement that says you haven't grown into these in the first 20 years, if you don't have a plan to grow into them now, those will be de-designated. And so in a sense, the net acreage of the UGA as a whole may change very little, but it'll all be in different places, is the best way to think of it.
I had a conversation with a couple of our county commissioners, and my question was, what's going to be the role of the planning commission in this process? And I was told, well, you're right in the middle of it. What I'm hearing is we're not in the middle of it. It's steering committees. So I guess I'm asking the question, what role are we going to play in that process, and when are we going to start playing it?
No,
if we are.
You will play a role. It's a parallel role with the steering committee. But recognize that each of the cities, we have tasked them with telling us how they're going to grow and do they need to grow into an urban growth area that is outside of their municipal boundary. While that is technically county territory, that means you will be involved in that. The steering committee is set up by GMA to be the place where all of the cities can collectively say, yeah, we agree on these boundaries now. You will have a chance to consider those ahead of that as we look at where are the growth pressures happening, where do we as a county think we should be pushing development in a particular direction. We will take your direction, combine that with the city's direction, and come back with a recommendation.
When do you see that happening with us?
End of the year, first part of next year.
Any further comments coming before the commission? Scott, do you have anything else to add?
Nothing. Thank
We
you.
have no minutes to approve, but we will be dealing with those, I would assume. And we'll have a vote on those.
We will have minutes to approve in October.
Thank you.
They weren't distributed ahead of time.
If there's nothing else to come
Did we get all of our other minutes caught up last time?
No.
No.
Okay, so what
That's
minutes?
the question. This would be the fourth one.
Okay, so we need to approve minutes for July, August. Oh, wait.
I don't know precisely, but yes, we have not been able to approve. We have not been able to produce those minutes for you since we lost our clerk.
Okay. I don't have a clerk.
We're getting caught up.
I don't have a clerk at my job at the city right now, and so I have a lot of compassion for how challenging that can make things. So.
If there's no other business come before the commission, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Pete.
Second.
Second by Clyde. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lori. Thank you.